It's time to get your checking account to zero with free checking from PenFed. That's zero ATM fees, zero balance requirements, and zero time spent waiting for your paycheck to direct deposit because you can receive it up to 2 days early. Open your account with just $25 and see how big zero can be. Apply online today at PenFed.org/free checking. Early direct deposit eligibility may vary between pay periods and timing of payer's funding. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.
PenFed's got great rates for everyone.
4 inches of snow isn't like new for this time of year, right? Don't you get some early storms?
Oh yeah, we've gotten some spitting of snow last couple weeks. This is the first like real snow, which for deer and elk hunters, especially deer hunters, this snow is just money.
Yeah, I remember when I was on that mule deer hunt last year, everything was hot, and then as soon as it snowed, things got moving, and that was amazing how many mule deer came from so many different areas. Like they just came from anywhere. Yeah. I don't know where they came from, but all of a sudden they were just everywhere. Nothing huge, but it was crazy.
They're just hide and go seek champions, and
That's
people
right.
don't give them the credit.
Yeah.
If they don't want to be found, they don't get found.
Not to be confused with Sasquatch, who is the current record holder, but they're pretty good.
That's true. They're on 4 legs. Yeah. They're probably in top in that category.
So I'll just do. I always have to press record. So I just recorded that. That's going to be the longest intro, or the longest pre-intro. Got Jaden Bales back again. Always great to have you on, man. Thanks for being on here.
Yeah.
I just had.
Thanks for having me on, man. I like catching up.
I had Chad Riker on yesterday. I recorded one with him, and I think whenever I talk to you two guys, I have like one question or one thing that I want to make sure that I hit. But other than that, I'm just like, no, this is going to be. There's no need to have a whole bunch of questions because it's on.
Yeah, well, that's what I think I've said before is like, as your Wyoming correspondent, I feel like we've got enough team chemistry here to just kind of cover some topics that I think might be valuable for other people and also catch up. So that's the fun part, right?
Yeah, for sure. So when you are talking about your snow, do you have like that? Is it the thin wispy stuff, and then later on does it get a little more wet, or is it just kind of that thin wispy stuff at all the time?
So right now it's coming down and it was 28 degrees. So today, and it's supposed to warm up to the low 30s. It's going to be pretty wet. It's going to be kind of coastal style wet snow. But when you go up high, I mean, it's going to be dry and fluffy and powdery. So, this is the kind of stuff right now, like anytime you get into that 30 something degree weather where it's snowy and rainy, that is just like the boot tester's dream, because I swear that any day you're walking around in this stuff, you find a leak in your boot somehow.
Yeah. That was kind of where I was going with it, because you and I have talked about coming up here, and every time that you were talking about your boots, like in the muskegs and how they work. And every time I'm walking around a muskeg, I'm like, dude, you got to go rubber boots. You just have to go rubber boots. And then when I was down there a couple weeks ago, walking around, and there was a little bit of sleet, a little bit of rain, and then walking through the grass, you eventually just water works its way in, and then your feet are just wet for days and days, and like mine were, and it just did not get, and it smelled terrible, absolutely smelled terrible. By the third day of having wet shoes, or soaked shoes. Well, no, I don't know if it's soaked. Wet shoes, a little less wet shoes than damp shoes. Every day for 3 days, it made my feet smell terrible, horrible.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. And if you don't have a way, like if you're camping, you don't have like a stove or something to dry them out at night in a wall tent. Like it's dang hard to ever get back to neutral. You're always fighting coming back from your cold feet. So that can get really gnarly on your feet too. Like it can really tear you up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Even with even wearing rubber boots up here, either the Grundens or the Extra Toughs, you walk around for a couple days in that, and your feet don't really get dry. They kind of get shriveled up, and it's not exactly trench foot, but it's not exactly good.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
what do you use for like a cover or a coating or something to protect the leather or to keep things waterproof? That's the longest way that I have ever gotten to such a simple question.
Dude, Nick Wax. Their Nick Wax has a leather and suede kind of like wash on waterproofing. There's also just a bunch of different types of waterproofing stuff that Nick Wax runs. This actually came from kind of back in the ski shop days. I worked at a ski shop in Eugene, Oregon, which is, dang wet and everything. And you're trying to keep waterproof all the time. And the Nick Wax, I think, was kind of the best all around stuff. Like the most reliable. I think that you could also oil your boots, with, I know Kenetrek, for example, sells their own oil compound that you rub into your boots. I think it works fine. But I do think that the synthetics probably last longer and do a better job. So unfortunately, like, it would be nice if like all of the good oils like were the best on the market, but I don't think they are personally.
Yeah, I went with I go Snow Seal, and
Okay.
it works pretty well. As well as certain
Snow.
things can. It just seems like
Yeah.
it's still going to happen. It's like
Yeah. That's good. That's good stuff too, though.
Yeah. So what is how does your gear change, and how often are you out camping away from like a vehicle? When I was down there with Abby, every day that we camped, it was next to the car, and we just made long treks during the day, and we came back. There was one day that we had a fire in a ring at one of the fire camps, so it wasn't illegal or anything like that. It was the day that she shot a grouse, and so we picked up the grouse, which was pretty nice. But what are you taking back in there for those days where it's super cold in the morning, and then it's kind of not really hot during the day, but certainly nice and kind of warm as long as you're out of the wind? Like, do you take a whole bunch of different stuff, or is it just like, you're going to be cold and you're just gearing for when it's going to warm up?
Dude, I like to think of it like from the style of hunting that I do, first and foremost, right? Because if you're out there chasing elk and you're running ridges all day long, you're gonna have a different layering system than if you're gonna go up to a glassing knob and sit there all day. So for me, I very much so. It's a lot like the similar kit that I've always ran all fall, but basically I just add an insulating layer. So let's just say, for craps and giggles, like if you're running a synthetic like thin layer as you're kind of a puffy in early September, then into October I swap that out for like a lightweight down jacket. Like the Brooks down from First Light and like the Grumman down from Stone Glacier are like the two that kind of fit that mold. And then I always throw in like, I look at the weather. Always look at the weather. I'm a weather fanatic. I don't know about you, man, but you probably just plan for shit weather every day.
Yeah. It's not even. I don't even know why I look at it. It's going to be rainy and windy.
Yeah. So I always like to see if it looks like, oh, clearly a storm system's coming through, then I'll throw in my rain jacket to put over the top of that. Like it's like a Gore-Tex 1.5 layer jacket from Outdoor Research. But then if it's not raining, then I always just have a soft shell to put over the top, something like a windbreaker that might keep off a little bit of a surprise rain or something. It also just keeps that down from getting ripped to crap when you're trying to change glassing spots or something. But anyway, yeah, I basically just go from a little bit like more synthetic, like thinner mid layer to a full on down puffy plus an outer layer.
Yeah.
I don't do anything with my pants. Do you?
I actually didn't bring a rain pants down there, which is stupid. Well, actually, it's actually I tore up my rain pants to the point where I couldn't use them anymore, and so I was either going to bring down like my rubber bibs that I use for the rut up here. It's a thinner rubber, but it is definitely a rubber, and it's great because you don't have to worry about when you're sliding down part of the mountain or you're going through all the brush. Like, you're not going to tear it up. It's so nice. But not having rain pants was tough down there, because when it started raining, then I got these pants. I have the de Havilland Stone Glacier, so that it's not waterproof at all, but it doesn't exactly soak in real well. So I was not as prepared on that one. But the thing that was kind of, I brought my puffy pants. I never put them on. I had the puffy jacket, and a couple mornings it was really stinking cold, and you get out of the tent and it's really cold. So I had the puffy jacket on, and I hiked in that. And I'm always paranoid about that sweat layer, because up here, once you get sweat and you get wet, like, you start to, you're on the hypothermia clock. But
Right.
down there, I found that it's so dry. If you
Yeah.
unzip and kind of vent it out, like, it's like the moisture gets sucked out too. So it's just kind of a different program that I'm not really used to. And I don't get to use the puffy a whole lot up here, because it is so wet. And so if that thing gets wet, it's not. I have a Sitka one, which is nice. I bought it on sale. It came from somewhere. I don't know if it's like. I checked the logo. You can, when you go down south, you can go to these areas that they sell Oakleys that are actually like Oaky. Like, it's a knockoff brand. I was like, is this really a knockoff brand? Because this is a pretty good deal on this Sitka jacket. It's like, is it really a T? Is it like Scylla, or like what is this? It seems awesome, but I don't get to wear it a whole lot, because it is usually so wet whenever it's cold. So, yeah, it's just different, because there's so many things I thought I wanted to have because it was cold. And then, man, if we shoot an elk, I got not a bag full, but a couple extra pounds to have in my bag. And then we're packing this elk out, which never happened. But just an interesting being in such a cold but dry climate versus up here where it's a lot more damp, and then figuring all that stuff out.
Yeah, totally, man. And the other thing of it is like, I don't think folks give themselves enough credit for how much body heat they put out when they hike, Like, man, I have such a hard time putting anything on more than just like a base layer and maybe a soft shell outer or something like that when I start hiking in the morning, down to 30 degrees or 20 something degrees. Like, I also, if it's chilly, and I always say, like, be bold, start cold, because by the time you're 100 yards up the road, you're going to be like, or up the trail, you're going to be like, God dang it, I got to shed layers now. Right.
Mhm.
So that's the one thing that, like, I think that layer management is the hardest thing to dial in. And oftentimes the best solution is to be comfortable at the start
Yeah.
or to be uncomfortable
Yeah.
at the start.
I like quarter zip fleece, things like that. It's so nice to be able to have that down, so as you are like hiking, you're getting that cold air in. And so, like, your chest can almost feel cold, but the rest of you is warm. And certainly your back, with no circulation because you get to pack on, that's going to be sweating. But it's nice to be able to have that. But just it's going to be levels of hopefully just discomfort rather than full on misery as you're doing that stuff. But
Yeah, for sure.
styles or something that Abby and I were talking a lot about, hunting styles, and we were thinking about when we were going.
Not related to gear.
Oh,
You're
no,
talking
not
about.
at all. I got no style.
Okay. Well, we were already talking about, and then you and I were talking the other day. Like, I shot an antelope in my blue jeans the other day, and that was, man, that was a throwback. That was great. But that's what I thought. I was like, styles. I was like, yeah, you've got the blue jean guys, you got the Sitka guys.
That was pretty funny. But I was thinking back to what I made a comment about. If it was a 1980 brand of Levi's, like, that was back in that sturdy denim. I don't even know if I could wear some of those old jeans anymore, because now there's so much of that synthetic and the spandex and stuff in those jeans that are a lot more comfortable than they used to be. I can't imagine the chafing, and I can't imagine the just discomfort that would come with wearing the old true denim jeans. And you look at those old timers who were riding horses with those things, because you kind of had to, right? You had to have a sturdy denim, like the skin
totally.
had to just be like bottom of foot type skin in certain areas, and it's, that's not me.
After years of fine print contracts and getting ripped off by big wireless providers, if we've learned anything, it's that there's always a catch. So when I first heard that Mint Mobile offers premium wireless starting at just $15 a month, I thought, what's the catch? But after talking to them and using their service, it all made sense. There isn't one. Mint Mobile's secret sauce is that they're the first company to sell wireless service online only. They cut out the cost of retail stores and pass those sweet savings directly to you. For anyone who hates their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. I was hesitant about having to get a new phone and a new phone number, but with Mint, you can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone and your same phone number along with all of your existing contacts. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for a family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and to get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/waypoint. That is mintmobile.com/waypoint. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/waypoint.
No, it's definitely not it. And I actually dealt with this question when I was on the search and rescue team in Laramie when I was living down there. Because these old guys, like we had a horse team that was part of SAR, and the old guys running the horses were like, well, I can't wear synthetics if I'm going to ride a horse because you just get the crap beat out of your legs. And I was like, wow, that's a really excellent point. I got nothing for you. Like they just have to, if you're working on those kinds of constraints, you just have to manage your moisture better and understand when you're when you're in danger zone, right? When you've gotten wet and you need to like really be cognizant of what your temperatures are.
Yeah. I'm teaching Into Thin Air with my Adventure Lit class, and
I love that book.
Looking at the difference in technology, even from 1996 to now, things have changed so much. If you look at the gear, it's that old, huge, puffy North Face type technology, and things have improved so much from there. But if you look at the first people who are going up Mount Everest, or at least trying it, the weight of it, or reading Endurance, the Shackleton adventure down there in Antarctica, when they just had this. They were always wet, but it was just that wool that was able to still stay dry. But I can't even imagine the weight of that, and just,
totally.
Just the gear. It's changed so much.
In order to do the same things that we do today, I mean, I think the moral of the story is like people were just way tougher.
Yeah,
and didn't have the time constraints. Like if they had to go warm up and they had to build a fire, or like I'm thinking about hunting in particular. And they had to go dry out their stuff over a fire at camp instead of hunting that day, or whatever the case was. Like that's just, they took the extra time.
Yeah.
We don't take the extra time, I don't think.
Yeah. In the back of my head, I'm dreading, and it happens all the time, but I'm just dreading the moment where water finds its way in and my socks are wet. And I'm thinking, gosh, I'm so soft. Oh, are your feet going to get wet? Or you're going to have wet socks. Poor guy. Just come on, man. Stop being so soft.
That's exactly right. Yep. And I will say though, like if you have the option to not do to take care of yourself, you should. If you have the option to be comfortable, you should be comfortable. But being uncomfortable shouldn't ruin your entire hunt.
Yeah. There's no reason to invite unnecessary discomfort just so you can tell other people. That's just stupid. But
yeah.
So different style here. Style of hunts. When Abby and I were down there, she had read a lot of stuff about elk hunting, and we'd both talked to you, and you were giving us tips, and I'd taken the Corey Jacobson course and read all that good content, and then listened to a whole bunch of different podcasts and stuff, and people say so many different things, and you have to figure out what tactic to use at what point. They can't tell you exactly what to do every time. There's no one secret recipe. It's the same thing with blacktail hunting up here. You don't know what you're going to have to use, and so you kind of have everything in the brain, and you try to utilize something, but when you're not hearing stuff, you just keep moving. Or we weren't hearing any bugles, but we knew that there were some elk around. So, like, do you go somewhere else to try to find something that's bugling? And that was kind of the Corey Jacobson tactic is, he just keeps moving until he finds a bull that's bugling, and so that's the one he's most likely going to be able to make a move on, rather than the quiet ones and trying to sneak up on something that you think might be there. And is that a waste of your time versus going high versus low versus how do you, it's impossible to really tell, but do you just kind of go with the gut? You're out there elk hunting and you're thinking, you know what, this is the time to glass, and nope, I'm going to go over there, or I'm going to go over there.
I think the biggest thing, and I actually was just talking to Jess a lot about this, because there's undoubtedly a lot of styles that work. Like there's no way that you can say this is the only thing that you can do to kill an elk as our example, right? Like, I think you have to play all of the factors into the game. So if it's the early part of September, you don't know where any elk are at yet, and you haven't scouted, like, let's say, like Abby did, right? It's probably worth it to be on your feet, moving and calling and trying to get something worked up and covering miles, right? Towards the end of the year, me and some buddies were hunting in an area where we saw elk. We knew the elk were there. They were bugling, and we were basically like taking a slower approach, and we're like, okay, we're going to wait for the wind to get right, and then we're going to drift in there and just try to sneak into those elk. Because when we're calling at that later half of the year, it wasn't working as well. So it was a lot more like sitting, waiting for the wind, and then moving slowly into their bedding zone. And it worked to get us really dang close. So, I think that you kind of have to take into seasonality, and then also your personal strengths. Like, if you've eaten too many Cheetos all year and are having a hard time hammering the mountains, like, that's okay to change your game plan and sit a wallow, or try to, slow play a calling sequence or something like that. The other thing is that, like, if you're in a highly pressured area, kind of like Abby's zone, and where those deer are, you just have such good knowledge of place that you can, like, figure out where, I said deer just a second ago, but elk, and where those elk move through. I've got deer on the brain right now. Then change your tactic and go sit on that meadow where that they roll through every evening, right? Like I think a lot of people get romantic about how they want to have it done, instead of looking at, like, kind of practicality of how you would successfully fill the freezer.
Yeah, that was the thing. Day one, we were at the spot where she'd put up the game cameras, and she'd had that experience. She'd heard bugling elk, and then she had called, and she actually got her Kindle out and was reading previously. And then as she was moving, that's when that 6-point was on its way over to her, but it hadn't made any noise except for raking a little bit. And so she was kind of caught as she was moving a little bit. And so I'm thinking we're just going to have experiences here. But we went in and we did some soft cow calls, did some bugling, tried everything, but we just didn't get any responses. And so then we're like, well, they're probably quiet now, so let's play they're here, but they're going to come in quietly. And we sat, and it was just crazy. Nothing was happening for those first 2 days. And then we were like, all right, let's get out of here. Let's go put on some miles. And then we tried that tactic where just like miles, and glassing, got up high. It seemed like we employed 3 or 4 different things, and at some point it wasn't really frustrating. It was just, this is kind of what you have to do. You got to figure some things out, and the worst thing we can do right now is panic or have that regret of, man, I should have come down 10 days earlier, or Abby should have just kept hunting by herself because she was having these great experiences, and she should have just filled the tag, and so we could have, like, camped in glass for mule deer or something like that. But it can be kind of I guess it would have been different if I had the tag. If I would have paid $1,000 for this tag, and this is all turning out a little bit differently, it would have been a little bit more stressful. But I think, like, keeping that calm was good, because then when the season ended, it was kind of disappointing. I would have loved to call in an elk for Abby, and we had a couple of close encounters, but it just didn't really work out. So hard with the bow. But then opening day mule deer, shoot an awesome one with the rifle. So
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
that was
different,
sweet.
just kind of recapping, and it is so similar. You know, I'm always curious about universal hunting tactics, and it's very similar to blacktail. There's times where you're like, you know, I'm not feeling this, or the wind is different, or something's happening, or I'm going to an area where people are calling a lot, and they've been calling for the last month and a half. So, our doe's going to be call shy now. Are, you know, all the stupid bucks or the curious bucks going to get, or the early rutting bucks, are they going to get taken out of the equation in early October before the rut is really on? They're just kind of curious, and you just kind of have some confidence, make a decision, and live with it, because you can't do two things at once.
That's exactly right. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like having some confidence in the game plan you're running. The other day we were we were helping a friend try to shoot her first elk. She had a cow tag. And and we had glassed up some elk and knew the meadow they were using. And so like we just went down there and sat at the edge of the meadow. And some of the other parties, or some of the other people in our party were just losing their mind. They just wanted to be walking the whole time. They just wanted to keep walking. And I think that if you're like looking at a situation, you're like, wow, I think, I'm confident this process will work. Then just run that process over and over and over again, like stick with it until something changes. Um, and then like the other day, Jess and I were out hunting elk, and they're not bugling up here anymore. It's middle October, and they're still kind of in there. I'm sure you could find a bugle if you tried real hard, but they're not going to call in or anything. And it's rifle season. So we're sitting up here glassing. We glassed these elk. That herd of elk that we had kind of expected to come out 1,000 yards below us was more like 2,000 yards away with about 30 minutes of daylight left. So we're like, probably not going to get on them tonight. You'd literally have to sprint. You'd have to Usain Bolt your way over there and then try to get a shot before dark. So let's just still hunt. So we took, the opportunity to kind of move slowly through some parks in the timber. And I love that tactic. It's actually what my dad likes to do. And I hated it as a kid. I just absolutely hated it. But we knew that there had been elk in this area, and we were like pretty confident, we're like, all right, let's just move slow. And we're talking, cover a few steps, look, glass, and then cover a few steps, look, glass. We didn't see any elk, but sure enough, we got to 80 yards on a bedded mule deer buck that just spotted, and that's how you, like, when you're doing something like that, if you find a critter like sitting there, and you're able to sneak up on them without them knowing you're there. It's just like, wow, that was going to work. The elk didn't get here, but if you did that same tactic over and over again, that same style of hunting over and over again, you'd run into one, and you'd get your critter down.
Yeah. I was wondering a lot about luck too. When we went across this little like valley to this other ridge, and we were looking down the ridge, and made a couple calls down in there, and then we kind of took a nap. And then we're working our way down to the bottom of it. Then we're going to go like head into the wind and work the edge of it. And it looked like an awesome spot, but it looked like a spot where maybe they had been at one point, and that was kind of the case. But we were walking past this bush, and then all of a sudden a grouse just takes off. And we're like, man, that thing, like, it ruined it for his buddies, because once that took off, Abby ended up shooting one of its friends. And so I wonder if, like, in the bush, it was like, dude, just be cool. Be cool. Hey, don't do anything stupid. Be cool. Be cool. And then it takes off, and then it gets his friend shot. And we were so close to being past them. All they had to do is just be quiet. And Abby gets this grouse, not because it was like expertly hunted. It was because, Steve took off and alerted us to the presence. So I just wonder the amount of times that we are successful, and it gives us confidence, but we may or may not have done the right thing. We were just lucky to some degree, but happened to be in the right spot to put ourselves in a position to be lucky. Is that you watch Ted Lasso?
I know.
No, it's a great show. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And so because we were willing to do this, and we were walking, we were putting the miles in, at some point you're going to have those encounters, and you do enough glassing, you kind of get, you can develop a feel. And I felt that a couple times when on that mule deer day, we're glassing one area, and I don't know why. I was just like, I don't feel it. And so we kind of went a little bit, we went a little westish, And then I just didn't feel it. I don't know why. There was a lot of stuff to look at, and I just didn't feel it. And then as we're going to the next spot is when we see a couple elk, and then we see the mule deer. And I was just like, how have I developed mule deer instinct? Was I just absolutely totally lucky? Because Abby wasn't really feeling where I was saying that we should go, and it's just weird to develop those things, but you get that confidence, and that might not have happened correctly the next time. Like, you're just lucky enough. You get these feelings, and is it skill developing? Is it luck? Does it matter?
Dude, I think like obviously there's a level of skill or intuition that you build over time. But at the end of the day, like the only the defining factor as to like whether or not you end up with the outcome you're looking for is if you're spending the time out there. Like when I was a kid, my best friend's grandpa actually was just a elk killing fool with his bow. And he sat a tree stand like for elk and just would sit on this heavily traveled corridor. And we kept asking him like, well, we want to kill an elk like you and yada yada. And the only thing he was like, well, why aren't you sitting in the tree stand with me? Because that's the only way that you can talk about tactics, and you can talk about different ways to do it. But really, like the only thing that's gonna get you the outcome you're looking for is if you're in the woods and you're in the mountains and in the right place at the right time. So yeah, I think we put a lot of weight, and look, this is coming from a guy who does a mule deer podcast every other week about the tactics of hunting mule deer. But I think that the time of field is what like makes the difference, like at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's funny too that I wrote that article for Rock Slide, and then I included 2 scenarios about black-tail deer hunting up here during the rut. And in both scenarios, I ignore one of the lessons that I had just written about. It's kind of knowing which one to employ or which one to focus the most on. Like, is it you need to be still, quiet, and patient. But sometimes you got to move, and just knowing which one to employ at a certain time it can be the source of a lot of frustration, but it's also that intuition. And like you said, you're just going to kind of get a feel, and sometimes maybe it works out, sometimes maybe it doesn't. But yeah, you just got to get out there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like, I think what you're kind of hitting on is like, once you do spend the time, then you start picking up the right timing as to which use different ideas, tactics, locations,
Yeah. So as a podcaster, as someone who's ingested hours and hours and hours, weeks worth of hours of hunting content, what percentage of your knowledge and intuition has come from that? Is it like a 90% being out there has taught me so much, and then 10% has been the online content, podcast, stuff like that? Is it a 50-50? Can you put a percentage on your overall mule deer elk knowledge and then attribute it to more actual experience, or is it stupid to try to put percentages to those?
Might be tough to put percentages to it because, it's always the cart before the horse, right? The knowledge is important. Like, you got to have an idea of how to get there. But as an example, I started really listening to hunting podcasts in 2015. It wasn't until 2020 that I probably would confidently say that I like started putting things together in any sort of predictable manner. So, I think that makes the time of field is the defining factor, because you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't actually do it, like, I don't know that it really matters that awful much. So yeah, I think it's probably on the front end, let's just say getting started, right? Like, you've never been hunting before, or you don't know what you're doing at all. You need the knowledge. You need like 80% of the knowledge, right? Like is what's going to make the difference from the get go, right? You can't just go out there with no idea what you're doing. But then as things change and as you develop as a hunter, let's say you start looking for bigger critters or whatever the case might be, your goals are going to change. Then that's, I think, where the time of field starts taking over, so that you could kind of hone in on what you're really trying to achieve.
Yeah, I like
I
that.
hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know if there's so many good metaphors that could work with that. It's kind of like the training wheels, and at some point you got to be able to ride the bike yourself, and so
Yeah.
courses, podcasts, things like that. Then it becomes like an enjoyment. You can just listen to the podcast, listen to people talk about the stuff that they did, and it's a lot of fun. But
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where, like, I've had friends and significant others be like, why are you listening to this podcast? Like, you've heard them talk about this stuff a gazillion times over. Like, this is the same thing that you hear over and over and over again. I'm like, yeah, but one, it's enjoyable, like you're talking about. And two, maybe you do pick up some sort of like tip, or you rehear something that you hadn't thought of for a while, and then you implement that weekend,
mhm.
I think that's more valuable than anything, is just like the reminders, or like keeping your brain fresh, thinking about all the different scenarios and all the different situations you can put yourself in.
Yeah, if you don't know tip B, then you can't understand the nuance of tip B part 1. But that doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense. Like, I got to go to numbers. Tip number 2, then you're not going to understand tip 2.1. So after listening to that more and more and more, you understand more stuff. Then when you hear this person talk, it's like, oh, there was a little nugget right there that I would have totally not even got, because I wasn't even looking at the same book earlier on when I didn't know anything. But that stuff's good.
Totally.
And there's a lot of times when people don't really know what exactly to communicate as far as what the tips are. And there's also a difference between what you think you do and what you really do. I've noticed that a couple of times when I'm trying to tell Abby something, like, when she was learning how to fly fish or something like that. Oh, you do this. And I was like, wait a second. Like, I think I do that, but do I actually do that? And I was like, no, I actually don't do that at all. I think I do that. It's like a fundamental that I think I do, but I actually do something else. And that happens. Like, even coaching basketball, like certain things, like you have to have your feet square looking at the hoop, but actually a lot of really good shooters have their feet tilted a little bit off to the side. But yeah, I don't know. I was getting off topic.
That's one of my
there.
No, it's one of my favorite parts about being a new person or a new student in a game. Like you're talking about basketball. I'm actually I don't think I've fully committed, but I've got a trad bow now.
Oh boy.
At the house, right? And so one of the things I'm really excited to do is just go, like, let's start from scratch, right? And relearn and relearn and relearn. And it's the same thing when it comes to hunting different things. That's one of the things I think you do well as a podcaster, and then I try to do is just like I try to start with a blank slate every conversation, because you're not going to learn if you think that you're tilted. If you're like, I shoot square to the hoop every time, and then someone points out something new fundamental to you, and you don't think that you can improve upon your current stance.
Mm-hmm. Or you realize what you're doing was totally different than what you said.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
I like it.
Yeah, that's it is fun to be like that sponge, and there's so much out there, and it makes me just think back to the old days when you only had, like, Field and Stream would come out with an article, or Outdoor Life would come out with an article, and then you would hope it would be relevant to your region, and you could learn the tips or whatever from this story, and that was or reading books. You don't. I mean, there's so much content now. There's so much available right now. It's a lot of it is super good, super relevant. Some of it's hogwash, but I don't know. Like, it's ultimately just pointed the fact that, like you said earlier, you just have to get out there and you got to do it yourself.
Yeah.
When you are making content, because you have, like you said, you do the Muley Monday podcast for Cody Rich, and then you've written some freelance articles. How do you approach presenting that content? Like, do you look at a specific audience? Because anytime you're writing journalistically, you have to have an audience and a purpose. Like, who am I writing to, and what am I trying to say? Do you tend to pick out, like, okay, this is Jeff Lund. I'm writing for Jeff, who doesn't know much at all about elk hunting or mule deer hunting. Are you like, okay, Jeff, this is what you need to know? Or how do you choose your audience and purpose for these articles you write?
Man, I will say, because of the way that I approach writing, is like, it's kind of something I do for fun. I write basically for an audience that looks like me, usually. and for people with kind of like close to my background. And like I said, I do it that way because it's most fun. So some articles that I have in the queue for this winter, I haven't started these yet, but like one of them is, should you hunt in shorts? And I hunted in shorts and pants back and forth for like the first 15 days of archery season or something. And so like it was just something I was curious about. And so I tried to answer the question. I think those kinds of things where you're trying to answer a question or try to like provide a solution to a query is fun because it gives you a direction to go right from the get. And then it also is like kind of ultimately kind of helpful. I'm not a great story writer, and Jess actually told me I need to do more story writing because it's something I haven't tapped in too much. But that's partially like why I write the way I write, is because I have fun with it, and I feel like if I have this question, maybe somebody else will too, and then we can answer it together.
Huh. Is that a thing, hunting in shorts?
Oh yeah. I have some buddies back in Oregon, or I would say like acquaintances of mine back in Oregon who do it. But then in New Zealand and Australia, it's like pervasive across the country. So my buddy Hayden went to New Zealand for a year. He was kind of stuck there during coronavirus. And so he started hunting in shorts, and I was like, God dang it, I want to see if I can do that. So yeah, here we are.
See, I would think I would like a very light pant, because then you're not quite as exposed. It's gonna brush things like that, and up here the mosquitoes. Like, there's no way. You want as much coverage as possible. But that's interesting. So
I will say they're quieter.
Oh yeah, I bet. If you are gonna pitch something like that, it's super unique. So if that was your first idea for the first article you ever wanted to get published, would that be, would you recommend that to someone else who wants to write and hasn't been published, to pitch a story like that? Because you want to stand out, but something like that, it's like, yeah, this might be a little bit too specific, or not really. Would that be your first pitch?
I think it's important to understand like the publication too, right? Like, as an example, that is a great article for Rock Slide, because there's a lot of stuff like how-tos and like specifically about gear, and like it fits that audience and it fits that like communication style of Rock Slide really well, right? But that probably is not a good one to pitch to the Juno Empire, right?
Yeah.
Is that so? I think it depends on like I almost would work, and this is what I did personally, was I worked backwards. And I found like some places where I was like, man, it'd be great to contribute there. And I did a project that I thought was neat, which was I called it my 201 rifle build. And then I was like, I wonder, like, I did the thing already. And I was like, I wonder if I wrote about it, if they'd be interested in it. And so you kind of have to test. I tested the waters with the publication first, like specific publication and specific style. So I think that's, I don't know what your experience has been, but that seemed to be how I could get my foot in the door best. If someone is more like Gray's Sporting Journal, who has, in my estimation, and I'm not an avid reader of Gray's, but in my estimation, Gray's seems to be a lot more storytelling and maybe a little bit more ethereal. Like, and you like to write that way, or you want to write that way, then maybe you find out their style and pitch them something that would go well in their publication.
Yeah, there are two things that in there that I definitely incorporate into mine. One is like having a background knowledge of the publication. Just trying to send stuff out to, like, Googling outdoor magazines and then sending a query. That's just it's not very effective. So like knowing and understanding styles, what they're looking for, what they've had, what they don't have, and then also working like in advance. Like Rock Slide, you can get published quicker, whereas a lot of these magazines are out. I sent an article to Alaska Magazine that's going to be published in this coming March, and they accepted it in the previous February. So you're like, they're over a year out planning things to put in the publications.
For sure.
That is a long way out. But a lot of times, if it's mule deer season now, like, you're looking to submit something for a mule deer season next year, or like right now it's almost too late to be submitting spring things. So writing stuff that's going to be relevant. Not only the content and the style, but also timing is important. And I almost never send queries. I like have the thing written. That way they know exactly what it is. And then if they want the whole thing, I can send that. But that's so important to match, and it's just going to up your odds because it's difficult to get published. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
anything you can do to increase your odds and show that you're a good writer, you thought it out, and this absolutely works with that publication. Being knowledgeable about that stuff is so important going forward.
Dude, I'm curious how much you think that the personal relationships with these people is important. Because I mean, it's something that I know has been crucial for me getting published in some things. Just being able to put a face to the name has been able to like fast track. It definitely feels like it fast tracks my foot in the door in some places.
I think it definitely helps. If you're if you're known out there as a content maker, you're not some random person. But I think the problem that a lot of people run into is the fact that they don't have a connection, and it was just kind of white noise. I submitted a couple articles to Meat Eater, and they said no, and I was like, what the heck, man? Like I am in Alaska writing about Alaska stuff. Like why would you not? But I don't the amount of submissions that they got, and I was like, I can't be submitting stuff to Meat Eater. Like it's just white noise. Like there's no connection there. So that was, I don't think it was a waste of my time, but it's like, yeah, that probably wasn't the way to go at that point. They weren't as focused as Alaska stuff. It was a lot of news for more of the down south type stuff and wide audience stuff. So it's difficult if your name isn't in there. So like anything that you can do to kind of get that first thing published and then deal with editors and talk with editors and be confident with that. And so I think, a big magazine for your first one would be a really tough way to go at this point. So finding something smaller, even if it is just like a guest column or something like that for the local paper, it gets published that way. When you have your little bio in there, you could say that you've been published. And then, you can kind of build that way. But, that's the reason why, you look at like the average listens of podcasts. What is it, like 100 downloads per episode within the 90 days? Like that's not a lot. Isn't that the average?
And it's something low like that. And it's one of the reasons why, like, I really am happy to be working with Cody on his podcast, because I know it'd be so damn hard. And kudos to you for building this podcast, because it's so damn hard these days to get something like that started off on your own. Man, the other thing that I would just comment on is the fact that, like, a lot, like you're saying, getting published in a local paper is really good. And maybe this is a pro tip, maybe folks can look into, but a lot of companies actually are hoping for more content for their website. So like Argali is one of the first places I technically like got published on, besides the websites I was running. And, just because they're looking for really quality articles to share with their customers. Right. And they're probably not going to pay for it, but they will definitely like help take some of that information and can give you a platform to get started with anyway.
Yeah, that's definitely huge. And there's like, Brad is so purposeful in everything that he does, which is an awesome business model. You don't get the impression that he's trying to overextend or just grow, which is good. And so it's not like he's not exploiting anybody that wants to contribute and be published. It's just like, I'm not at the place right now where I can pay for it. And so if you want to be paid, then I'm not going to be able to take it. But there are some people who are looking for, just how can I get as much free content as possible? And at some point as a writer or content maker, you have to figure out that you're putting time, effort into this thing. You should be compensated some way. That doesn't, it's not like a bratty entitled sort of thing. And maybe in order to get published right off the bat, you kind of, all right, I'm not really good yet. And so let's get just a couple things out there, and I'll do a couple things for free. And then now, all right, I'm at the point now where my words are worth $25, $100, $200, $500, whatever it is. So you kind of have to go through that, but at the same time, at some point, you gotta kind of stand up for yourself. The amount of free marketing that so many people get because of, tagging people and whatnot. And Sitka's Diverge series is brilliant because they get so much free, beautiful photos to be able to share. Because everyone wants to win that contest, and you're getting so much advertising for Sitka, so many beautiful images. It's brilliant. But, for so many of those people, they're so excited because Sitka shared their photo. They got so much more out of it than you did. Like you get the proud. Like it's good to feel proud, good to feel happy, but at the same time, like, man, if you're that good of a photographer, an idea, like concept, like you can put those things together, then you should probably get paid at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a tough balance to do for sure. No.
Did you
anyway,
did you have a
Go
difficult time asking? Like, did you ever have to ask, like, hey, I'm expecting to get paid for this one? For like,
I'm in the middle of a handful of those right now, like 3. So I think that it's important. And let me just also preface by saying, like, all 3 of these publications, I knew I was going to get paid. So it's good to have that conversation beforehand. But still, I'm like, all right, guys, like this was published in July digitally. And here we are in October, right? Like, all right, like it's been a little bit. But so I think that there is an element of like you have to stand up for yourself after the fact as well. And I'm bad about it, man. I am as bad as anyone. I'm like, it'll be fine. Like, especially because I don't do it for my day job, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you have any good tips for making sure that that's taken care of?
That's so frustrating. I had one point where I'd written a bunch of articles and I was owed for, I think, 8 or 9 articles, and it was almost a year later, and I stopped writing for them. I was like, I'm not going to keep adding to this balance sheet until you pay me, because this is getting a little weird, right? I feel like I'm being exploited. I appreciate the opportunity. I love the opportunity. The layout looks great. I'm so happy that you're using my articles in your magazine, but come on now. What's the deal here? And there was one that I sent in an article, and sometimes it can take between 4 to 6 months for them to even get back to you to say that they're going to use it or not. And so about 5 months afterwards, I said, hey, did you get end up using this thing? And they're like, oh yeah, we put it in our reader submitted articles back in like June or something. So I'm like, wait, so you used it without asking, or like without telling me, and then you put it in the reader's thing so that you wouldn't have to pay. I was like, that's pretty jacked up, So that sort of stuff happens, and I don't really know if there is much of a tip. You don't want to be a jerk about it. You want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Things get busy. They're running a business. They're trying to get stuff, figured out for the next issue and whatnot. But it can be difficult to be put in that situation where you're not like you did the work. Like you got it turned in. It was good. It was published. They benefited. So. But you want to sound like, where's my money? I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. You don't want to sound ungrateful for the opportunity, but at the same time, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So that's good.
So what's next on the list there? I know Abby's she's not sad. She's moving up here, but she only went 1 out of 6 on her tags.
When is she moving?
No, she's coming up here on, she'll be up here next Monday.
When's she moving up there?
Monday.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, so she's gonna miss her rifle elk season.
Yeah, she's gonna miss. Well, we have a totally free, full freezer at this point between the caribou leftover caribou from the spring, the fish, mule deer we got, some elk, so 2 blacktails. Like we're pretty good, and we're pretty good on meat. But yeah, she wants to get up here and enjoy the duck season and things like that, and then hunt the rut up here. So,
yeah. So did you? One thing I was actually curious about was, did that buck end up being a chronic wasting disease positive buck?
No, it was negative.
Negative?
Yeah.
So I sent my another really good friend of mine from Laramie into that same spot after the fact. And she shot a buck out of that. I assume it's the same herd of deer. So, and she shot a buck that was younger than yours, or than your wife's. That was positive.
Really?
Yeah. So that's something. That's something that's kind got me. I'm really a major proponent of getting stuff tested, just because even if you eat it still, like I think it's a great idea to provide the data to the Game and Fish. And then another buddy of mine, he shot a buck and was the lucky. He got the lucky first chronic wasting disease positive deer in one of these units out in Wyoming. I was like, oh man, like what are the chances, right?
Yeah.
So that's something I've been watching, and Jess and I are going to go hunt hard for mule deer starting on Friday. October 15th is the opener around here, and we're just stoked. We've got a handful of deer spotted that are really nice, and we're going to also help her friend who is 17 get a deer. Hopefully her first mule deer, and she can, because she's a youth, she can shoot any deer. So that should be super fun, like having that kind of first deer experience will be a good it'll be a good learning lesson. And maybe we could touch base after this whole deer season and talk a little bit more about mentoring and stuff, because it's something that I am just firing on all cylinders about. It's so fun. But then after that, I got a Nevada deer hunt, and then I've got an Oregon elk hunt kind of back to back. So I'm really excited for those. Those are my 2 trips this year. I haven't taken any big chunks of time to go hunting yet this fall. So
Nice.
That's what's coming up for me.
Yeah, speaking of mentoring, sometimes like I will reverse mentor. I'll be asking my students who know a lot more than me, like, hey man, when do you start calling? Like, are you do you wait until November 1st? Do you call a little bit before? I had a conversation with one of my students earlier this week about that, and we just kind of chatted a little bit before the bell rang about it just seems like in certain areas people are already calling, or going when grunt or rattling, but not rattle with forkies rather than 3-point, stuff like that. It's kind of funny to be in a spot where you can kind of share tips with the students who they are out there and they are doing the thing and they're trying to figure stuff out, and it's pretty cool to learn from them. And I think a mentor has to be open to new things too. Otherwise, it's just I know everything and I will grace you with my presence and I will bestow my knowledge upon you because I am the ultimate hunter. Like that's no good. But.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Anytime, that's like maybe a good final parting thought is anytime you can learn from someone, don't miss the opportunity. Don't squander it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so give me the last little pitch for where people could find you, listen to your show, read your articles, and then how did that Wyoming Wildlife Foundation thing go? Is that still ongoing?
Okay, it is still ongoing, and if someone wants a spoon and crock pot, wants to join the spoon and crock pot club, you can go get a t-shirt from us still. I'm not wearing mine today. I wore it yesterday, but those things, the t-shirts turned out sweet, and they're like limited run. We're only doing this run for the Wyoming Wildlife Federation, and it supports all of our boots on the ground work. So that ends like the end of the month, end of October. So folks should check that out. That would
go to the website and get that, or you can go on the Instagram and do a swipe up thing, or what?
We don't have enough people for swipe up, but WyomingWildlife.org, and it's front and center homepage, and you can go that way. Or you can go to our Instagram or Facebook, and the links are pretty easy to find there. But I appreciate you bringing that up, because that is really important, and it's this whole time of year is where we get to have a lot of fun, and the rest of the year we would get to work on making sure that we can have this fun, as far as Wyoming Wildlife Federation is concerned. So, and then we've talked about the Rich Outdoors Muley Monday podcast a lot. It's $5 a month to get Muley Mondays and Wapiti Wednesdays and ad-free listening for the rest of the podcast that Cody does. I think it's a really good podcast feed. So if you want to give us basically the price of a beer a month, that's a good way to go do it. And then you can find me kind of at Jaden Bales on Instagram and anywhere else. There's the social medias. So thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Call that good. Until next time, man. Take care.
Oh, it won't be long, I'm sure.
No, thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Talk to you later.
Later.